Hi, everybody, once again. Thank you for joining us at Digging for Gold. I'm your host, Dan Goldberg, as you already know, otherwise known as, or also known as, Bearded Brilliance for you on Instagram and Bearded Brilliance on TikTok. Here we are in our studio once more, and you may recognize the gentleman across from me is Peter Hornberger, who was in episode 8.
Yeah, way back. Last episode.
But in the last episode. And Peter and I were chatting about a bunch of different things, and he was asking me questions. And it's interesting because no one really asks the host, the interviewer, to be interviewed. Okay? Yeah. I mean, when was the last time Johnny Carson was interviewed or Joe Rogan was interviewed?
Yeah. Johnny Carson, it's been a while.
What? It's been a while. And he's very difficult to interview now. I know that. But who interviews the podcaster? So we've thought that it would be an interesting and maybe even intriguing to some degree show to have Peter interview me.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I mean, it's normally what I do in this space.
It's correct.
When I actually sit in that chair too.
Yeah,
but so I get a different angle, and I'm looking over here, looking at the recordings, because that's also part of my support is doing all that. But I think it's a great idea for us to continue a conversation, but frame it from your perspective. You're excellent at bringing together different people from all kinds of experiences and drawing their past out. But as you said, you're also a pretty interesting person, and you've done some cool stuff. But
and I'm old, so I had a lot of years in this.
Yeah, you've done this for a while.
Yeah.
So we figured we'd come back and talk about this. And one of the things we quickly discussed before the show was, particularly for me being on episode 8, I'm typically the host, and I don't normally get to hear things from a perspective of what am I like as a podcast guest. And when I watched and listened to what we talked about in the previous episode, I saw things very differently. And I think one of the reasons why I'm really pleased that you've decided to launch a podcast is, to me, this is the currency of engagement for the 21st century. This is something that I think you would be able to share, that it can be done. It's not terribly challenging. So I usually frame this as it's simple but not easy to launch a podcast. It's not, you're not mixing chemicals. There's no danger of, I got the ratios off by the slightest bit. It's simple in the fact that it's not complicated. Not complicated does not mean it's easy, though.
That is correct. There's all this preparation. There's thinking about who your guest is, doing some background on your guest, coming to the studio, doing pre-studio stuff. Then there's always post-production. There's all these things that people don't know about, but happen. And when you're the host, you're the one asking the question. So you got to do some research.
Yeah,
you got to know about the people. But when you're the interviewee, okay, it's a little different. So you're not 100% sure what the person's going to ask and stuff like that. And you got to be open, and you got to say, okay, let's roll.
You're along for the ride. And so as I was listening back to last episode, I realized a couple of things. One, if you go back and look at the previous episode on YouTube, you'll notice.
Which you should. You should look at all of them, by the way. Okay.
I oftentimes work as a producer and helping people get their podcasts listed. And one of the things I always tell people is, hey, have the microphone close to your mouth as you talk. And then I watch myself sit in this very seat, and the microphone was like 3 feet away from my face. I'm like, who is this moron? And what is he doing? Like, why was he not listening to the producer? And meanwhile, that was me. So part of what I wanted to do was reflect back on this, because that was an eye-opening experience for me to see myself from that perspective that I don't normally see. And I think that's where we came up with this concept of maybe it's time for people to hear you as the guest, because there might be some things that we uncover even things that you see about yourself
Yeah.
as you sit in that chair that may be helpful, insightful as you carry on into the next series of episodes. We have, well, I know you have plans on updating,
Yes.
upgrading, and continuing this podcast
Yeah.
series, and I think that to me is going to be the next chapter of all this.
Yeah, it's going to be the next chapter is a good way of putting it, or season 2, or
Right.
whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it. It's interesting being the interviewee, okay, because I've been a professor for many years now at 3 universities,
Mm-hmm.
Kutztown University, before 4 universities, Rosemont, and then Kutztown University, Penn State University, both
Mm-hmm.
upstate,
State
main
College, yeah.
campus, State College, University Park,
Yep.
and Abington, and of course Temple,
Yeah.
okay, at main campus and at Ambler, and that comes from being inquisitive and wanting to learn things. And I've written 4 books, which to me is incredible because I flunked out of school, and I may have said this before. I was a terrible student. I was always thinking of different things, and I just about made it out of Central High, which at the time, I may have said this before, was because we've had a couple Central
Yeah,
High.
we have.
Yes, it was the #1 academic, I think, public high school in the country. It's the only one where you can get a bachelor's, and it was set up to get a master's and a doctorate. It's the only high school in the country. But me, I barely got out. I was the class clown, one of 2, okay? And then when I got out, I wanted to get to Temple University. It was my dream school.
Right. This is long ago, not
This is
like
long ago.
5 years ago, 10 years
No,
ago. We're
this
saying my
is
goal
like-
is to work there. You wanted this as
Yeah, and we're talking about the 60s,
Yeah.
okay, 65, 66, because I'm 803 years old, so, but going to be 804 years old soon.
Soon.
So the candles on the cake are crazy. But anyway, I got into Community College of Philadelphia. Temple rejected me. I was in the first class ever at Community College of Philadelphia. And to me at the time, it was like, wait a minute, this is not that difficult, okay? I
Yeah.
just came from
yeah.
basically a college preparatory school. And of course, things have changed because it was the first class. They're figuring things out.
Yep.
And I got accepted to Temple.
Nice.
I was so happy, okay? I got accepted to Temple, and I immediately fell back to my old ways.
Okay.
And I got a .80.
Okay.
That was my cum. That was not in one class. That was my cum, a .80.
Yep.
And
This is out of 4 people, not like out of 1. Like, hey,
Right.
80% is pretty
No,
good.
It's
Nope.
out of 4.
Nope.
It's out of a 4. Okay, so if that wasn't I don't know, a 1. It was less than a 1
Yeah.
because I passed a 1-credit weight training course. Okay, that was it. So I flunked out of Temple, found myself in the Army, in the service, National Guard, active duty, training and all that other stuff. And it wasn't a good time because there was a war.
Yeah.
There's always a war, but
Yeah.
there was a war going on. Anyway, when I got out of my active participation in the service, I went back to Temple. No, I went back to community college.
Okay.
I'm sorry, and I graduated with an associate's in arts, whatever that is. And I went back to Temple, and I said to myself, how in the world did you ever flunk out of here?
Yeah.
And I tell this to my students. And I say, listen, you too can flunk out. You too can have a less than stellar GPA and wind up getting a doctorate, getting a master's degree, and teaching at a university. just keep going.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is apply yourself. It is not difficult to succeed if you apply yourself. Now, I'm not saying that it's easy because there's all these other factors, right?
Right.
Money, people,
Yep.
the place, the time. There's all this other stuff. But that was my first heavy growth understanding of
Got it.
what it's like to fail, not just fail, I mean fail.
Right. So there's also a difference of you internally evaluating what you did and saying, you know what, I did not meet my expectations and
Correct.
I am determining I failed.
Correct.
Versus an organization
Right.
saying, dear Daniel Goldberg, we've evaluated your progress and deemed you to be a failure. And that hits very differently than
It's crazy.
internal is hard.
Yeah.
But then when you get it from like this official
Oh,
level, that's a tough thing.
Yes, it was a tough thing, and it was made tougher by the fact that you lost your deferment
Yeah,
for the
right,
military.
military, yeah.
And it was like, I'm
consequences,
an idiot.
yeah, lots going on
consequences.
with this.
I let down my family.
Yep.
It was basically stupid. Okay, it was immature, and I was a stupid, immature person at that time. I admit it. Okay, so that's what happened at the beginning. That's the major thing that like it just like opened up
But
my eyes.
it was failure was eye-opening and changing your trajectory in a way
Yeah.
that you wouldn't change that experience, would you? At least
No, as a matter of fact, you know, I've had a lot of things, and we'll get to more of it as we go through. People say, do you regret anything?
Yeah.
Do you have regrets? And I say, no. I mean, what? I mean, I didn't harm anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I may have held myself back to some degree, but I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't, you know, physically, hopefully not mentally, hurt anybody. But if I didn't do everything I did, I wouldn't be here now, literally in this room.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
I wouldn't have my children. I wouldn't have my grandchildren because none of them would exist.
Yep.
Right? So it's like, no, I don't regret anything. Do I think about would I do something different here and there? Yeah, of course. Everybody does.
Well, yeah, I
you
think
know,
so.
I would have studied in high school. I
Yeah.
would have studied in college, but I didn't know. I knew, but I didn't know. I didn't process it correctly. So that's, yeah, I don't regret.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think you know, but similar trajectory. I had a 0.0 one semester in college, and
0.0
yeah, 0.0 every single thing.
flunked
I took.
everything?
Everything. It was
in one semester.
well,
You
at
did
least that one semester. Yeah, it's not like the other semesters were, you know,
Stellar
towers of success.
Yeah.
They were also pretty pitiful, and like you said, now here I sit as a professor as well, and worked at a couple, 3 universities, and I think again those experiences, while in the moment were traumatic,
Very.
but I wouldn't be who I am if I didn't experience the trauma, interpret that, and then make adjustments to say, all right, if I don't want these feelings to happen anymore, I need to make adjustments. And like you're kind of saying, what you share with your students is sometimes these adjustments don't have to be massive changes. For me, it was show up.
Show up.
Like
Apply
that
yourself.
was like 80% of the change that I made from a failing student to a successful student was show up, be in the room, and be engaged. So if you're going to be in the room, be there to be a student. Don't go there to watch a soccer game or do it. Like go there to do the thing you're supposed to do. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a second, this is how you get an A? I had no, like, why didn't I try this first?
Right. Put down your phone. Close your laptop. I have to tell my students that. Put down your phone. Are you here?
Yeah, be in the moment.
Because you're in a seat doesn't mean you're actually here. Okay.
Great point.
So I mean, you're physically present, but you're not mentally and emotionally present.
Yeah.
So they got to get over that thing and do that. It's very interesting to watch how life has progressed. I mean, when I was born in the 40s, the
1940. I was going to say, just to
right.
clarify, 1940s.
Yeah, the 1940s, not the 1840s, although sometimes, I think I was, but I'm not that old. So I look at how things have changed. I sometimes think about my grandfather, who was born in 1880. He lived to be 100. He saw massive changes, from the invention of the automobile to make it a staple, to before that. Now he was born in Europe, to the start of air flight,
right,
to landing on the moon.
Yeah.
And he was an engineer, and he did some amazing things. But his life was the changes. One thing that I also learned about that has helped me, and we actually chatted about this before the show, is how you should react about things that happen to you.
Yep.
One of the problems that I think a lot of people have, and I've had them, is you react emotionally. Okay, and that can really be a bad thing. Okay, it can be a bad thing in business, bad thing in relationships. Emotions, they're great when everything's
It's
happy.
okay to have them.
It's
right?
okay to have them.
Don't think that not having emotions is necessarily the goal.
Emotions are great, okay? Except when you act on them without doing research in a business perspective.
Yeah, particularly.
Okay, it's happened to me. Okay, and from a business perspective, when you act on things emotionally rather than rationally, you can really hurt yourself and hurt your businesses. And I think people get caught in that, especially entrepreneurs, because they're really into it emotionally. It's their baby.
Yeah.
And that I started, which is now a pretty big company, and it was sold it, but it was really a very interesting journey for me.
Yeah.
To see how I built it up, and the PR, and that I was on a lot of television shows.
I do. Maybe they don't.
Yeah,
but
I was on Good Morning America. I was on. You may not know the show, To Tell the Truth. I was on I was on ABC, CBS, NBC, PBS, local stations, all in Chicago and LA and San Francisco, and in newspapers and magazines, and I was even in Playboy. I wasn't in the Center, but I was in Playboy. I was in Boston and Miami.
Thank goodness, by the way.
What's that?
Thank goodness they did not
thank goodness,
reserve that for you.
That would have ruined my whole thing, because look, I'm naked on top. That's about it. So I got into it. It was fun, and I'm naturally an entertainer because I was a stand-up comic.
Yep.
You know that.
Yes.
I worked with some pretty well-known people, but that's a rush.
Yeah.
That's a rush. But what you have to do is sort of categorize each thing. You gotta say, like, okay, this is a rush. I'm on the Doug Llewellyn show in L.A. It was he had another show about courtrooms and stuff, and that was a rush, as was Good Morning America and Good Morning Boston and whatever. But then you come back and you go, that was the television person. Now I got to deal with what's going on in my stores in Chicago. What's going on? Why am I having this turnover with this guy in Doylestown? All this. So you got to you don't believe your own press.
Yeah.
Okay? because reality will strike you down every time.
Yeah.
And it's something I learned. I learned through the process.
Life is already coming up with the next thing to throw at you, so you can't
Yeah,
really stop and say,
you
well,
can't.
I did it.
Right.
Well, that's great. It's done, but guess what? More is coming.
More is coming. And you and I were talking about a story about an incident I had a few days ago, and I said to my better half, I said, and because we were both a little upset, not crazy upset, but just it was annoying. I said, wait 3 days.
Yeah. Yep.
And I said, because in 3 days you'll forget it. It won't even matter anymore. And I think people get so wrapped up in the anger or the emotion or everything that they don't realize that in a couple of days it won't matter, or a day, And certainly 100 years from now, nobody will care.
No.
It'll be all over. So these are things that I think that the younger generation, that's anybody below the age of 80, no, I'm kidding, the younger generation has been brought up, another thing we talked about, with this, okay, with scrolling through Instagram, scrolling through Facebook,
Yep.
scrolling through YouTube, which I hope you do,
Yeah.
okay, and looking at 15-minute or 15-second videos, and not doing the research behind it. We're living in a very divided world, and people believe propaganda, and people actually believe stuff on Instagram and TikTok and all the other social media without doing research, without doing substantial research. You can't okay, I believe this, so I'm going to do research with my bias already in place.
Yeah.
So I'm only going to go to the places that
Or just
will
as bad
substantiate
thinking
my
that you're
bias.
going to be able to do the research without bias. I'll
Right,
just turn that off.
Right. No.
That's not possible. So
No, we all have a bias.
So framing that before you look at the research is
course.
also part of this. But this brings up, if you go back to episode 8, which you should, we talked about artificial intelligence in episode 8, and
I'm artificially intelligent. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that, but now you know.
Obviously. Yeah,
We were talking about how artificial intelligence might change the world and take jobs away.
Yeah.
And just as you're talking about this process of going back, doing research, and being kind of grounded in critical thinking and how important that is to navigate, particularly today's complex world.
Yeah.
The reason we're here is we're talking a little bit about your journey, right? We talked about high
Right.
school and college, and we started to get into the business side of things.
Yeah.
But before we kind of continue down that trajectory, one of the concepts that I reflected on after episode 8 was this concept of how is the supply chain of leadership going to change as we take away some of those
Yeah.
experiences, right? So we were talking about your experiences in high school of
Right.
being in a space that was academically focused. The culture was around academic preparation, and you had to behave that way because that's what the culture demanded. And then you had time in the Army, which I'm certain also had its own culture and expectations.
Absolutely.
And then you were back in college, but then you also went on and started your own businesses that you got to develop that culture. And some of it is about making mistakes.
Correct.
But that becomes kind of interesting now that we can ask the internet or ask AI, what's the answer to this? And making mistakes becomes different because there's always access to information or directions. And therefore discovery becomes a little bit more of it changes. I don't know, I haven't put my mind around what happens, but what I'm hearing as we're talking with you about your history and your life is discovery through failure, sometimes dumb luck, sometimes things just happen. I showed up and I did a thing, and somehow they kept inviting me back on TV because it's not like you knew what you were doing, you just did it, and it worked.
Yeah.
But then now there's this ability, and I fall into this quite often where it's like, I'll just ask the internet real quick. So there's not to me, my I don't know, opportunities to discover are fewer, largely because I make them fewer. I could still go out and try it.
Right.
But so how do you see some of that supply chain of, do you think you would develop as a leader as much as you have if you had access to all this information? Because the supply chain would have been shorter, right? There's less opportunity for you to get in, learn, grow, and add value. So reflecting on some of your past experiences and if some of those might have been changed now in the age of AI.
I think that a lot of it would have been impacted.
Yeah.
I do. I think that my first time around as a student, an ignorant student, okay, not non-intelligent, I was always very intelligent, but ignorant of certain facts, ignorant of certain situations, okay? Ignorant means to ignore, by the way.
Yeah.
So, and the first time around at Temple, I probably would have performed better because of the thing in my pocket, okay? I could look things up, I could do all that. Pardon me. And I may not have gotten a .80. I may have gotten a 1.80 or something. I may not have found myself in the service, okay? Not good or bad, but just different. And would it have impacted my growth? Yes, if I would have taken it seriously and not looked at it in a superficial way.
Okay.
When I teach, I try to, at the university level, I try to bring my students, and I'm going to give you an example, bring my students into the real world, okay, not just text and theory, but the real world stuff. And we were talking about negotiation, I think this was. No, this was in management, in a management course. And we were talking about how politicians manage, okay, specific politicians, and what their policies are. And I asked my students, who do you admire from a political standpoint? And one student gave me the name of a politician. And I said to her, I said, well, what are her policies? She couldn't answer it.
Yeah.
Because we live in this weird world, and it's not so different than 100 years ago from this perspective. It's like they like the way the person looks, the way the person talks. They connect with them because of their community or whatever it is. But when you dig deep, the person may be a shell, okay? Nothing inside. Just dumber than dirt, okay? But they look good, okay? And that's a big part of it. I think AI, if you use it correctly and you're not lazy, can give you the backgrounds on anything you want, okay? And even in the business world, it's I think that we talked about this. I think certain professions may be, I won't say eliminated, but maybe diminished. Okay. Copywriters, graphic artists for logos, things like that. Because you could talk into ChatGPT or Grok or any of those and say, I want a picture of blah, 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 or I want an ad for this and that. Now, there will always have to be somebody behind it to say, well, that doesn't really meet our criteria, or I don't really like this. But rather than having 5 people sitting in a room, it may be only the one supervisor of the computer, right?
May very well be,
And it's interesting because I think what will happen is the mechanics, the electricians, the plumbers, the HVAC people, the food people, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
We need them. We need more of them,
Yep.
actually. So I think that you'll find that those areas will be more enticing for people because AI really can't impact that. You're not going to ask AI to bring you a watermelon, okay? Because you can't.
Yeah.
You're not going to. You may be able to have some electronics worked, but there are certain areas that leadership, the understanding of leadership, will be diminished.
Yeah, and I think, and this just popped into my head 10 seconds ago as you were saying things, and you might have seen my hand move because I don't know why. Something just happened when you were talking about this, and it was kind of this thought of like expertise used to be a thing,
Yeah.
right? So 500 years ago, there was a village elder who had seen things and done things, and when people needed to access that knowledge, they could go to that person or they could go to the library, and now everyone basically is the expert. So expertise has become diminished, at least cognitive.
Yeah.
Knowledge expertise has become diminished.
I agree.
But skill expertise is
Different thing.
still going to be incredibly valuable. And to me, that's the thing that popped into my head is, so what's good about being an expert on cognitive stuff now? Everyone has
Right.
the ability to access knowledge expertise instantly and very affordably now. And I shouldn't say everyone, many.
Many.
Because it still does have access restrictions of cost and devices and internet
societies.
software, societies. But to me, that's what your
Yeah.
interpretation of that made me think about is, wait a second, are we talking about the fact that being an expert is now less valuable than maybe it was at maybe any time prior history?
Because there's an expert in your pocket.
Yeah.
But emotional intelligence will never be diminished by AI, to me anyway, because people to people, is not robotic. They'll try to make it robotic, but I truly believe that if you're emotionally intelligent and know how to interact with people,
Yeah.
it will heighten the view other people have of each other, to the point where somebody will be the wise person. Wisdom will be
Knowledge plus experience. is
knowledge plus
how you frame
experience
out wisdom.
will be honored. Okay, knowledge for the sake of knowledge is a beautiful thing. I mean, I love to read books and watch things,
Right.
but the knowledge is again in your pocket.
Right, trivia or trivial, right? It becomes
Correct.
trivial. It's
Right.
nice, but
you
for
can,
what?
You can pick it up on a desktop, a laptop, a tablet, a phone, a smartphone. But it's that emotional thing, that emotional intelligence, that I think, and the wisdom that it sort of brings with it. Okay, that should be. I'm not going to say will be. Should be cherished.
Yeah, just a quick example that I experienced between yesterday and this morning. I'm working with a group of educators at Penn State University. We're trying to develop a statewide program, and we put together all the details, the agenda, and we need to name it. So a bunch of us were working on things, and there's a name, and we sent it forward to our marketing person at Penn State, and she reviewed it. She came back with this really well-organized, long, detailed, the name was 3 words long, and we got a very detailed response, and every single word of it was, like we don't know what we're doing, and we need, and it's not that she came back to us with, guys, you're wrong. She came back with like, here's the perspective when we create names.
Right.
These are the things that go into it. We're like, well, we didn't put any of that into our recipe. And again, as I was reflecting on our conversation, I was thinking, man, now if we had this conversation with AI, it would have just been that we would have lost the wisdom. We would have had the knowledge, but we wouldn't have gotten the wisdom that we got from my professional colleague that said, guys, like, this is great, this is a good start, but here's what we're going to need to do.
Yep.
And I got to tell you, in 20 minutes, having this response with a person who has emotional intelligence, wisdom, which is the combination of both knowledge and experience, it was far more productive than if we had all been sitting plugging things into an AI platform, because we wouldn't have gotten emotional intelligence plus wisdom coming back to us. And I think that's
and that's the person behind the AI.
Yeah.
That's the person behind the AI that's developing your logo or your copywriting. Well, it's not going to do away with those jobs.
Yeah.
It will diminish the amount of people, maybe, but that's it. It's funny because when you talk about names, you know, I had a consulting firm for many years after Four Eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and we named a lot of companies,
Mm-hmm.
developed
Interesting.
logos,
Cool.
but it was, and some of them you recognize right away if I said them, but it was always a research project. It was, oh, here's the name, okay? It would come to me, but I'd go, or to somebody else at the firm, and we'd say, but wait, let's run this by.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this. Let's do maybe a focus group.
Yep.
Or whatever, and then come down to the whatever it is. But so there'll always be the need for people.
I think so.
There always, AI is a tool. It's not a person.
Yeah.
It's a tool for people, okay, for industry, for business, but unless there's something wacky, you're not going to marry a robot or AI. Oh,
I'm not. I'll tell you that.
I'm
No.
not either. But
I mean, I don't like
you know.
people. Like, if any of you know me, I'm
Yeah.
really not a pro-social person. I don't want to say I'm anti-social, but I'm very pro-solitude. But that's
Pro-solitude.
that's a
I
level.
like that, pro-solitude.
Yeah, thank you.
As opposed to amateur solitude, which you don't want.
Oh, I'm a professional at being by myself. I'm
So
good at that.
It's a great. I think we're entering. I don't think everybody knows it. A whole new perspective on things, while at the same time being archaic in some areas of civilization. We still have war, right? We still have division. We still have hatred. We still have bigotry.
Mm-hmm.
We still have all those things, divisiveness, all those. You would think by now, after going to the moon, after having AI, after all these other things, we could get rid of that crap. But we keep harboring those things. We keep slamming on them. We keep talking about them,
Yeah.
as opposed to saying, well, let's just get along. How hard is that? How hard is
Yeah.
it to get along? I mean, who cares what your religion is, your race is, your ethnicity? Who cares? Are you a good person? That's all. Come on in.
Yeah.
If you're not, you can stay outside.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do.
It's like we haven't learned that. We've learned all these other things. Technology has given us so many great things. It's beautiful, but we haven't learned to get along.
So let me ask you a question about what you've learned, though.
Yeah.
Right. When did you start your first business? Was Four Eyes the first business you started? Or you
Yeah,
started
well,
something
after
before
being a
that?
paper boy and
All right.
all the other stuff. Yeah, 1972,
All right.
November 1st.
There you go. Yeah. But now you just started a podcast, and I think that's a business. You started something new. It's a pretty big gap in between those two spaces.
Yeah, I've had some other things.
You've had plenty of things in between. What are some things you learned from 1971 to now that might be having you do business differently than you would have in the 70s? But what are some things that maybe are the exact same, even though years, decades have passed? Your mindset might still be the exact same as it was when you were starting Four Eyes to when you're starting Digging for Gold podcast.
Yeah, being able to work with good people is great. I mean, as we said earlier when we were talking pre-camera on, I've started almost all my businesses on a shoestring.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Four Eyes, which turned into a multi-million-dollar
Mm-hmm.
thing that had offices all over the country, it was $1,000.
Wow.
$1,000. A friend and my brother, they helped me out with the money. I didn't have anything, but I had good people. I had good people that I stood by. Did I make mistakes and hire some people that were a little wacky? Yeah, yeah, really. What did I learn from that? I learned that a good talker isn't always a good person. Okay, it's not right for the job. There were two specific ones that I would not have hired,
Yeah.
knowing. But then there's the empathy part. You have to have empathy with
Yep.
people. People make mistakes. We all make mistakes.
Yep.
And I had one guy who made a terrible mistake, and he had to take a second job to make up the money that he gambled away when Atlantic City was starting to have gambling.
Yep.
And I noticed him because he was a very important guy in my company. I said, "What's wrong with you?" He said, "I lost all this money, and blah, blah, blah. I had to take a second job." And this is almost the very beginning of Four Eyes.
Okay.
So maybe the second year in or third year in. And I thought the guy was great. I loved him. He was perfect for the, and I had to make a call. And I used this. Now I probably can't, now that it's out in the ether. Okay.
Yeah.
I use this as an exercise in my courses. I say, what would you do if you hired a person that you really liked and he worked well, but he gambled away money and had to take a second job and wasn't performing at the rate that he would perform normally? And I use it as an exercise, and my students come up with all different things.
Yeah.
And my thing was, some students will say, "Well, give them a loan or do this or do that," and I said to them, I came to the conclusion it was worth it to me to just give him the money that he lost in Atlantic City and say, "Here's the deal. This is not a loan. I don't want you to worry about it anymore. I don't want you to take your productivity away. But if you ever do it again, you're fired.
Okay.
This is your one warning.
Wow.
It's only one warning. If you ever do it again, you're gone." He never did it again. He was at the company, even when I sold the company. But so the things I've learned is listen to people. Don't think that you're greater than they are or anything. You just have a different position.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm more outgoing than some of them, but maybe they're more technically advanced in the optical field than I am or were. I think I'm pretty good at it now. But that's the thing that has become important to me. Listen to people who have other opinions and don't close them down. What else have I learned? That's such a major, major thing. Hedge your bets.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Risk, entrepreneurs are not risk adverse.
Right.
Okay? They take risks. I take risks. But the older I get, the more calculated those risks are.
Yep.
Okay? So the risk I would take when I was 25 is not the risk, I'm just using as an example, of what I would take when I'm 75,
Right.
78 or whatever, okay? They're not, I would calculate it differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that entrepreneurs learn that over time, how to hedge their bets to some degree. But they're still risk takers. And thank goodness for that, because we wouldn't be the society we are without entrepreneurs.
Indeed. No risk, no reward.
No risk, no reward. That's why it. And I may be going a little off track here, but that's why. I hope we're not running out of time, but we have a couple minutes.
Yeah.
That's why it really gets my goat, and I may have mentioned this in other episodes, when people scream and yell about successful entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Unless they're exploiting people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm against that.
Yep.
Okay. But if they're giving people jobs and good jobs, and they wind up becoming billionaires, well, they became billionaires because they did the work. They worked hard. They made money, but they gave other people jobs, and they brought opportunities to communities and so forth. And I don't put them down for that. They started in their basement or their garage,
mm-hmm.
or put a team together and came up with some great idea. And that's the beauty of this country. You can do that. I'll never forget, I had 7 students from France in one of my classes, and I was talking about entrepreneurship. And I said, you could go home tonight and start a company.
Yeah.
You go to one of these, biz filings or
Yeah.
Zen Business, start your LLC or your S Corp or your C Corp, and you're in business tomorrow.
Yep.
And they went, no, you can't do that in France.
No. Yep.
You know, and you can't. I've had businesses in Nigeria. I have business in Russia. Another thing I've learned that I would never do again in my life, and if I should live a second life like Shirley MacLaine, I wouldn't do it
No.
then. Okay, is don't invest in unstable government. Countries with unstable governments.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to make money because a new government will come in.
Yep.
I had a business in Nigeria, and I'm talking to my partner there. He lived half the time here and half the time there. Here, meaning Philly.
Yeah.
And one day I couldn't get a hold of him. I'm reading in the paper, there's a coup. So he was on the ministry, the oil ministry, and I figured he's
Yep.
gone. They wiped him out. So, and then there was another coup after that. It's like,
Yeah.
you can't, don't. You're a risk taker,
Yeah.
but be a rational risk taker.
Yeah.
That's what I learned.
Cool.
That's what a country, what a world,
How about it?
what a universe, what a universe.
I mean, this was
Yeah.
pretty good. I mean, it's got its problems, but as far as
Yeah.
universes go,
It's pretty good.
I'll take it.
And what a multiverse. I want to see the multiverse. I want to see the universe on the other side of the universe.
I just hope that there's a universe where I have hair somewhere, but I don't know.
Mine's sucked down. Sucked down.
Just
I
goes
wanna
the
tell
other
you
way.
something. When I was in my 20s, I had such a thick head of hair that the barber would say it's hard cutting your hair because I always get stuck by your hair.
Not anymore.
And I should have said, wait a few years.
Yeah, just hang on.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Well,
Cool.
Peter, it's pretty good. I've enjoyed this.
Yeah, this is it's always cool, and even though I've known you for 20 years, there's always small little parts of stories and avenues that I hear that are
Yes.
new to me and hopefully new to
Yeah.
people listening. And one thing that I think we can encourage people to do is leave comments, whether it's on social media,
Yeah.
even in the YouTube spaces, because as you mentioned, one of the things that you like is you like interesting people. You're empathic, and I think that's one of the things that intrigues me about your interest in starting a podcast. Is it's not just to plow forward with your thoughts, your opinions, and your guests. It's to be responsive and empathic to what people want to hear about. And that's one of the reasons why we thought this episode would be a pathway for us to say, tell us what you want to hear too.
Yeah, tell us what you want to hear. Subscribe on the button, right? That says subscribe.
It's somewhere down there.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know where
down there. It's down there, but subscribe, okay? Because I can't be in all of your living rooms or dens or whatever.
It'll be
I'm
awkward.
telling you where, yeah, it'll be kind of kooky. Unless somebody comes up with an AI that
Yeah.
they can move me around. But do that. We're on YouTube at Dan G, D-A-N-G, the number 4, the letter U, the number 2, Dan G for U2. And as soon as you sign into that, you'll see Digging for Gold. On Spotify, we're on as Digging for Gold.
Yeah.
And then we're on Instagram at Bearded Brilliance 4, the number 4, you, and at TikTok at Bearded Brilliance. Okay, and we're just growing. We're building it up. I would love to have comments from all of you, and as we did, and I'm also asking you to tell us what topics you'd like us to cover.
Fair.
Okay, what people you'd like us to have. If you know someone that you think would be interesting, and it's rationally possible to get them on, I don't think we can have certain people on. I don't know if they're coming to Philly to sit with me, but maybe they will someday. That depends on you and how many people you get to join us. But I like that. This is the whole idea about this thing.
Yeah.
This thing called a podcast and Digging for Gold. And just so you know, the name Digging for Gold came from my students.
Yeah.
The podcast idea came from my students. They said, why don't you do a podcast? And I said, okay, well, what would you call it? And then we had voting. They came up with names. I came up with it. And they voted for Digging for Gold. That's why it's called
you did
Digging
it.
for Gold. Did it. That's it.
Yeah.
Thanks to Peter.
I mean,
Peter Hornberger.
this is part of what I do in my role at Penn State is I help people make their ideas happen.
He does.
And
does.
I'm not particularly good at doing all these things myself. I think I'm reasonably good at being that support and inspiration, and
You're
to
excellent
say,
at it.
let's if you have the spark, I'll try to give you a pathway to see what happens with it.
It's great. So remember Peter. Okay. And remember Digging for Gold.
There you go.
And then 20 years from now, when you walk by my dirt, just say, Dan, I enjoyed your podcast, especially with Peter.
That was a good one.
Because and all the other ones.
Yeah.
We have great guests. It's been insightful, intriguing, and fun being the guest,
Cool.
the interviewee on my own podcast.
Yeah.
Who would have thunk it?
It's a new thing.
Yeah, it is a new thing. It's great. All right, folks. We'll see you next time on Digging for Gold. Take care.
See ya.